Vespertine humanity kept the watch, an account set down by Veil of the Seventh Lattice, Archivist Emeritus of the Avari, for the instruction of those who were not yet kindled when the star called Obad went dark. You who read this have never been afraid of the night. I want you to understand that before anything else, because it is the thing that separates you from me, and it is the thing that also turns upon. You were born after. You came into your light, in nurseries lit by steady lamps that the compact promised would never fail, and they have not failed, and so the dark to you is a word, a curiosity, a thing in old recordings. You have never felt your own thoughts begin to come apart at the edges like wet paper. You have never grayed. I have. I want to tell you what saved me. I want to tell you about the humans, and the long dark aboard Obad, and a woman named Halloran who kept the watch until there was no more of her left to keep it with. First, you must understand what we are, you and I, because if you do not understand it, you will not believe the rest. We Avari think with light. This is not poetry. Our ancestors rose on a world that knew no true night. Seth, our cradle, turns one face always toward its sun, and our people grew up on the long bright terminator in a country of perpetual gold. Cognition braided itself around that gift. The lattice organs along our dorsal ridge are not merely sensory. They are part of how we hold a thought in place. Light comes in, and the thought stays whole. Take the light away, and the thought begins to drift, to fragment, to gray. And then comes the unlight, which is the worst thing a living Avari can know. A dissolving terror in which the self comes loose from itself and scatters. Prolonged, it kills, not the body. The body keeps breathing. It kills the person and leaves the breathing behind. So you see why we built the compact the way we did. Why every Avari habitat is overlit to the point that other species squint and complain. Why our greatest fear as a people was always and only the dark. When the compact of reaching hands first went out into the deep, between the stars, do you know what frightened our planners most? Cold, not the void, the dark. The long sublight crossings where, if the lamps failed, there would be nothing. No sun, no terminator, no gold. We sent psych tenders. We sent triple redundant power. We told ourselves we had solved it. We had not solved it. We had only never been tested. Obad's station hung at the edge of nothing, where the trade lanes thinned out toward the unmapped reaches. And there was little reason to be, except that someone had to keep the relays singing and the maps current and the long ships fueled. A small star tended it, old, quiet, the kind of star the surveys call stable in the way you might call an old animal stable right up until the morning you find it dead. The humans who had named the station found it funny to call it Obad, which is, they told me, an old word from one of their old tongues for a song sung at dawn, a song of mourning and of lovers, parting at first light. I never learned, in all the years after, whether they named it as a hope or as a joke. The humans were like that. You could never be sure which of their solemnities were also jests, and the longer I knew them the more I came to believe the answer was usually both at once, and that this was a strength of theirs and not a flaw. There were perhaps 200 souls aboard when it happened. Avery, of course. We made up most of the crew, for it was a compact station. Tisk in the methane sections, small and quick and prone to startle. A handful of the great slow Orin who tended the heavy machinery, and spoke once for every 100 words the rest of us spent. 19 humans. 19 out of 200. Remember that number. It mattered later when the counting came. The humans were there because they were good at the work nobody else wanted. The long, unglamorous maintenance shifts, the deep cycle repairs, the watches that ran through what we Avari, with our station clocks set to a remembered home, still called night, even though out there in the deep, there is no such thing. The humans volunteered for the night watches. We thought them strange for it. We thought it a small charming defect, the way a person might prefer cold food or harsh music. We did not understand that we were looking, even then, at the whole truth of them, and simply failing to read it. Halloran ran the night watch. Mara Halloran. She was old for a human, which I did not know how to gauge then. Her hair had gone the color of station metal, and there were deep folds at the corners of her eyes that deepened further when she was amused, which was often. She had a slow way of moving that I mistook at first for weakness, and later understood as the economy of someone who had spent a long life learning exactly how much effort each thing required and refusing to spend more. She had been out in the deep longer than most humans live, she told me once. She had no intention, she said, of dying anywhere with the sky. I asked her why. She looked at me with those folding eyes and said, "Skies are where things sneak up on you, Vale. Out here, you can see them coming." And then she laughed. Because, of course, out here in the sealed dark, you can see nothing coming at all, and that was the joke. And it was also not a joke, and I did not understand that yet either. The star called Obad died on a watch cycle like any other. It did not die gently. Quiet stars rarely do. There was a flare. The instruments saw it coming with perhaps 40 minutes of warning. A swelling on the star's face like a held breath. And then a second flare riding the first. And the survey models that had called this star stable for 100 years revised themselves in the space of a quarter hour into a forecast that the duty Avery read 3 times before she would say it aloud. A radiation storm, a long one. Days, the model said. And then they said, "We cannot bound it," which is the most frightening thing a model can say. To survive it, we would have to do the one thing Obad Station had been built never to need to do. We would have to go dark. You must understand what that meant. The flare would wash the system in radiation that our shielding could not hold against if the station kept drawing the power it needed to run, hot and bright. The only way through was to shed everything, to power down the reactors to a whisper, seal the crew into the shielded core, kill the external arrays, kill the heat, kill the light, and ride it out, cold and black and small, until the storm passed and the star quieted and we could come up again into power. The duty Avery gave the order, because the order was correct. I have never blamed her. She gave the order. And then, I am told, she grayed before the main lights had finished dimming and had to be carried. That was how fast it took us. The lights came down, not all at once. They stepped us down in stages, the humans on the watch, calling out the stages in their flat, calm voices. And somewhere around the 3rd stage, as the gold went to amber and the amber to a deep failing red and the red toward nothing, the Avari aboard Obad Station began, 200 of us, nearly as one, to come apart. I remember the beginning of it. I want to be honest with you about this, because you have never felt it and you deserve to know what your forebears endured. I remember the thought I was holding. Some small thing, a maintenance figure, a number, beginning to slide the way a footing slides on wet stone. I remember reaching for it, and finding that the reaching too was sliding. I remember the lattice along my ridge going quiet, the way a voice goes quiet. And the silence where the light had been was not peaceful. It was a mouth. I felt myself being unmade and poured into it. I remember screaming. Most of us were screaming. Methane's sections, where the Tisk had their own panic in their own register, were screaming too. A high needle sound through the bulkheads. And under all of it, the Orin had gone into the deep stillness their kind go into when they have decided a thing is hopeless, which is its own kind of dying. 200 souls in the dark, and nearly all of us were drowning in it. 19 were not. I did not see what the humans did in the first hour. Because in the first hour I was not capable of seeing anything. I have reconstructed it since, from their logs and from the accounts of those few Avari who held on longer than I did before they too went under. I will tell it to you as plainly as I can, because it deserves plainness. When the lights died, the humans got to work. They had a plan. That is the first thing, and it still astonishes me. They had made a plan for the dark, quietly, among themselves, in the years before any of us thought we would need one, because the dark did not frighten them. And so they could think about it clearly, the way you can think clearly about a thing that does not have its hands around your throat. Halloran had written it. The Vespertine Protocol, the humans called it, after a word of theirs that means, of the evening, belonging to the dusk. Protocol for the failing of the light. I found much later that she had drafted it as a kind of joke too. A contingency nobody believed they'd run, and had updated it every year anyway, seriously, in the way she did everything that was also a joke. Plan was this, that the humans would keep the watch. All of it. Every hour of it for as long as the dark lasted, in shifts without exception, so that no Avari and no Tisk and no Orin would ever be alone in the dark for as long as it took to die in it. There were 19 of them. and there were nearly 200 of us, and most of us were past speech, past thought, scattered into the unlight. They decided, 19 of them, that they would hold all of us, by hand if they had to, and then they did exactly that. I have read Halloran's first log entry from the dark. It's 9 minutes after the final stage. It is very short. It says, "Lights are out. Avari are going down fast, faster than the drills, reassigning all hands to bodies. We will not lose anyone alone tonight. Get them lights and get them held. Talk to them. Keep talking. Keep talking. You will see why that mattered." First thing I knew, coming up out of the first long gray, was a voice. I want to be precise, because this is the center of everything. It was not light that brought me back. There was a little light. They had hand lamps, rationed cruelly. A few minutes of glow passed from one failing Avari to the next. Never enough, never for long, because the power had to last the unbounded days, and they could not know how long they would need it. The light helped. The light alone would not have held me, because there was not enough of it to hold 200 of us, and they knew that. And so they had found something else to hold us with. A voice, a human voice, low and steady and continuous close beside my ridge in the black. It was Halloran, though I did not know her by voice yet. She was talking. She was not saying anything important. That was the genius of it, though I did not understand the genius then. I understood only that I was being unmade and pouring into the mouth of the dark, and that there was a voice, and the voice did not stop. She was telling me about a river on Earth, near where she had been a child, brown and slow, and the trees that leaned over it, and a dog she had loved, and the particular smell of the mud in the late part of the year. None of it mattered. All of it mattered. It was a structure. It was a thing with edges, laid down beside me in the dark, and I, drifting, scattering, found that I could put a thread of myself along the edges of it. Could I follow the river? While I followed the river, I was not pouring into the mouth, because following is a thing a self does, and a self that is doing a thing is a self that still is. She felt me come back. I do not know how. She said, "There you are." And her hand was on my ridge, warm. The warmth of them was always startling, and she said, "Stay with the river, Vale. Don't go chasing the dark. The dark's not going anywhere. We've got hours yet. Stay with the river." And I stayed with the river. And when I began to slide again, she gave me a new thing. The dog, then the mud, then a song, then the slow, stupid, magnificent business of how you bake a loaf of bread, which she narrated to me in full, the kneading and the rising and the second rising and the smell. And somewhere in the second rising, I understood that this was what they were doing throughout the whole sealed core of Obad Station. 19 humans, moving through the black, going from body to body, never letting the voice stop, laying down rivers and dogs and bread and songs and idiot jokes, edge after edge after edge, so that 200 drowning selves could each find a thread to follow and follow it back. You will say, this is a small thing. A voice in the dark. I have heard the young say it. Only a voice. Only kindness. And I tell you that I have lived a long time and crossed much of the deep, and seen what the great engines of the species can do, and I have never seen anything greater than 19 humans deciding that no one would die alone in the dark, and then making it true with nothing but their voices, and their warm hands, and their refusal, their flat, calm, bottomless refusal to let the dark win. Let me tell you why they could do it. Because I asked, in the long middle of the dark, when I had come back enough to ask, I asked Halloran, "How are you not afraid?" She was quiet for a while. The hand lamp was off. We were saving it. So I could not see her, only feel the warmth of her where she sat against my flank, and hear her breathing, which was a sound I had learned to navigate by the way you had once navigated by it, though you do not remember. "We are afraid," she said at last. "Make no mistake, Vale, we're scared right now, every one of us. Dark's an old fear for my kind. Older than this station, older than the ships, older than just about anything we are." "Then, how?" "Because we got used to being afraid of the dark," she said, "and then we learned to do things anyway. That's the whole trick. That's the only trick we've got." She shifted. I felt her settle. "Let me tell you about my kind, where we come from. You'll laugh, maybe." And she told me, in the dark, the thing I have never forgotten, the thing I want most of all to pass to you. "Turns," she said. "Turns." And said, so half of every day is night, real night, full dark every single day, forever, since before there was anything you could call a human to stand in it. Their world gave them the dark daily, in great unavoidable doses, from the very beginning. And in that dark, on that world, were the things that ate them. We were small once, she said, soft, slow, not much in the way of teeth. And when the sun went down, the things with the teeth came out. That was their time, the dusk and the dark, that's when they hunt. And our ancestors sat there in the night, in the open, with the wrong eyes for it, blind and soft and slow, and listened to the dark fill up with things that wanted to eat them. That is a horror, I said, and I meant it. To my people, that is a vision of the unlight made flesh. To live every day in the certainty of the dark, and in the dark to be hunted. Sure, she said, it was. So here's what we did. And I heard the fold come into her voice, the amusement, the thing that was always also serious. We didn't get better eyes, didn't get faster, didn't grow the teeth. We did something stupid. We sat down in the dark, in the worst of it, in the hunting hour, and instead of running, we made a fire. We made our own little sun, and we sat around it, in the dark on purpose. And we kept it lit, and we took turns staying awake to feed it while the others slept. We kept the watch vow. One of us awake in the dark, every night so the rest could rest. 100,000 years before we had a single word. For any of it, we kept the watch. I have thought about that more than I have thought about almost anything. A small, soft, slow animal on a turning world, in the hunting dark, deciding we will not run. We will sit here in the worst of it, and keep a fire, and keep a watch, and hold each other through the night, deciding it so long ago and so completely that by the time they reached the stars, it was not a decision anymore. It was simply what they were. The evening's our time, Halloran said. The dusk. When everything else is bedding down or panicking, that's when we settle in and get to work. We've got a word for it. Teen. Things that come alive at dusk. I felt her smile in the dark, the way you can feel a smile if you are close enough and you have learned the warmth of a face. I always thought it was the prettiest word we had. Funny thing to find out, this late, that it's just us. It's just the description of us. The animal that comes alive when the light goes out, because that's when it's needed. I will not pretend the dark was only voices and warmth and beautiful talk. It was not. It was very long, and it got worse before it got better, and the humans bled for it. The storm did not pass in the days the model had hoped. It ran longer. The power, rationed cruelly from the start, ran lower. The hand lamps were down to seconds at a time, then to almost nothing, then to a single lamp kept for emergencies, and the rest of the holding, done by voice and hand alone in the full black. This cold came up through the deck as the heat budget shrank. Tisk in the methane sections were dying despite everything. Their panic ran in a register the humans could not soothe as well, and 3 of them grayed past return in the first long stretch. And I heard a human weep about it, once, briefly, in the dark, before she made herself stop, because there was more watch to keep. And the radiation, even sealed in the core, was not nothing. The humans went out into it. That is the part I want you to hold. The core kept us alive, but the core was kept alive by systems that failed, as systems do. And when they failed, someone had to go out from the shielded center into the exposed dark of the station's body to mend them. Into the radiation, by hand, by feel, in a black so total that even human eyes were useless. And they worked the way the blind work. By memory and touch and the maps in their heads. Every excursion cost them. They knew exactly what it cost. Humans are very good at knowing exactly what a thing costs and going anyway. They had a chart. They tracked their doses on a chart, and they rotated the excursions so that the cost fell evenly, so that no one of them spent too fast. And they did the arithmetic of their own bodies out loud, calmly in the dark, the way you might ration water. Halloran's numbers on that chart climbed faster than the others. I did not know it at the time. She was the eldest, and she had been out longest in her life, and she had less margin than the young ones, and she took the excursions anyway. Took more of them, I learned later, quietly reassigning the worst of them to herself, because she had written in the log, "The young ones have more nights left to keep, and I do not intend to outlive this dark by much regardless." She did not tell me that part. She told me the rivers and the bread and the watch. She let me believe, in the dark, that we would all walk out of it together into the light. I have decided, after long thought, to forgive her the lie, Because it was a lie told the way the humans tell their solemn jokes, to hold a person up, in the dark, when the truth would have let them slide. The worst of it came near the end. Though of course we did not know it was near the end. That is the cruelty of an unbounded dark. You cannot ration hope, because you do not know how long the hope must last. The coupling failed deep in the station's spine. A thing that, untended, would within hours have starved the core of the last trickle of power, keeping the air moving, and the cold from becoming the final cold. It was far out. It was in the heart of the radiation. The maps said the excursion to mend. It would take a human most of an hour, working blind, in the worst exposure on the station. There was an argument. I heard the end of it. The young humans wanted to draw lots, or to send two who could split the dose. Halloran would not have it. I heard her voice come down on the argument the way a hand comes down, flat on a table, once, ending it. I'm already spent, she said. Look at my chart. I'm spent, and you're not, and that's the whole math. And I won't hear it argued. One of us has nights left to keep after this. It isn't me. So it's me that goes. And then more quietly, in the voice she used for the rivers, it's all right. This is the watch. This is just the watch. I found her before she went. I had come far enough back by then to move, to feel my way through the black toward the warmth of her, and I put my body against her body the way she had put hers against mine, through all the long dark. And I tried. I am not ashamed of it. I tried to keep her. I said the only true thing I had. I said, you brought me back. You laid the river down beside me, and you brought me back. Do not go out into the dark. And she put her hand on my ridge, warm, that startling human warmth, and she said, Vale, Turt, listen to me. I'm not going out into the dark. I felt the fold come into her voice, the amusement, the seriousness, both at once for the last time. Shit. I'm going out to keep it off you a little longer. That's all I've ever done. That's all any of us have ever done since the fires. Somebody sits up in the dark so the others can make it to morning. Just. And her voice did something then that I had no name for. A small catch, gone almost before it came. You just make it to morning, all right? That's your whole job now. You make it to morning, and you remember there was a watch. Then she went out into the spine of the station, into the worst of the dark, and she mended the coupling with her hands. Working most of an hour, by feel in the full black and the full storm, and the air kept moving, and the last of the cold was held off, and we made it to morning. She did not. She came back. I want you to know that she came back. She did not die out there, alone in the dark, which would have been the one unbearable thing. The thing they had sworn from the first hour would not happen to anyone. She came back into the core, and the others held her. All of them, the way they had held all of us, with their voices and their warm hands. And Halloran went down into her last gray, surrounded. I am told, for I was there, but I was holding her, and not watching. Surrounded by every voice she had spent the dark teaching us to follow. They laid the rivers down beside her at the end. They kept her watch for her, that one last time, so that she would not have to keep it alone. She had been right about her chart. She did not outlive the dark by much. The star called Obad quieted 3 station days later. The storm thinned, and then it was gone, and the order came up through the core to bring the power back. Slowly, in stages, the way it had gone down. The humans called the stages out in their flat, calm voices, as they had at the beginning, except there were fewer of them now to call. I felt the lattice along my ridge wake as the light came up. I felt the gold come back into the world, the gold I had been born into, and had thought, in the worst of the dark, I would never feel again. And I will tell you the truth of that moment. Because it is not the truth you would expect. I did not, in that first flood of returning light, feel only relief. I felt grief. Because the light coming back meant the watch was over. And the watch being over meant that the thing which had held me through the dark, the voices, the warm hands, the river, the firekeepers who came alive when the light went out, was no longer needed, and would fold itself back into the small charming defect we had always taken it for. The humans would go back to being the strange ones who liked the night shift. And almost no one but me would understand what had moved through Obad's station in the dark. Because almost everyone who could have understood had been too deep in their own gray to see it. That is why I have spent the rest of my long life making sure it is understood. That is why I became an archivist. That is why you are reading this. We counted when the light came up. We always count after. Of the 200 souls aboard Obad's station, 173 came up into the light. Of the 19 humans, 11 did. 11. 8 of them spent into the dark, mending the things that failed, keeping the watch, going out so the rest of us would not have to. 8 out of 19. To bring 173 of us to morning. They knew the arithmetic from the first hour. They had written it into their protocol, in Halloran's hand. They had named the protocol after the word for the thing they were, and they had run it without flinching, and it had cost them very nearly half of themselves. And not one of them. I have read every log. Not one of them recorded a single word of complaint. The last line of the Vespertine protocol, the line Halloran put at the bottom of the document she revised every year as a joke that was also serious, reads, "The morning is for the ones who make it. The watch is for everyone. Keep the watch. You have never been afraid of the night. Told you that at the start. And now you know why I told you. You have never grayed, never felt yourself pouring into the mouth of the dark, because somewhere along the way the compact learned from Obad, learned from 11 humans who came up into the light, and 8 who did not, that the dark could come for any of us, any time, and that there must always, always be a watch. Changed everything after. You know this part from your lessons. You do not know it came from this, the redundancies. The watch rotations on every compact vessel and station, staffed in part by humans by long tradition, and now by every species that has learned the trick of them, the trick that is not a trick. Be afraid, and do the thing anyway, and never, ever let anyone be alone in the dark. We have a word for the watch now, in the compact tongue. We borrowed it from them, the way we borrowed the practice. It has come, among my people, to mean something close to sacred. The young do not always know where it came from. Now you do. I am very old as I set this down, and the lamps of my chamber are bright and steady, as the compact promised they would always be, and I am not afraid. I do not take the light for granted. The way you do, the way I want you to be, able to. Because that ease is the gift they bought for you. When the light is steady, I think of the dark, and of a woman with hair, the color of station metal, and folds at the corners of her eyes, sitting against my flank in a black so total there was no telling where she ended, telling me about a brown, slow river, and a dog, and the second rising of a loaf of bread, laying down edge after edge, so that I could find a thread of myself and follow it back to morning. She made it to morning too, in the only way that lasts. She is in this archive now. She is in the word, Vespertine, every time you say it. She is in the steady lamps you have never once feared. She kept the watch, and the watch is why you are here, and the watch goes on. Make it to morning. That is your whole job now. And remember there was a watch. V, 7th lattice. Set down in the light.